I am excited to welcome Paul Shoulberg and Claire Tuft, who are the respectively the writer, director, and the producer of the great new thriller horror film So Cold the River, which is now available on demand. So how the two of you doing this morning or this evening or whenever you're watching this, folks?
Good.
Good. Glad to be here.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk a bit about this movie, which really surprised me in a lot of delightful and horrifying ways. Not horrifyingly bad, but just really really kind of messed me up in some respects. But it tells the story of Erica Shaw, who's a formerly successful documentary filmmaker who's sort of fallen on hard times. And in classic film noir fashion, a femme fatale shows up to ask her to shoot a sort of a deathbed interview with her dying father. And that leads Erica back to the town in Indiana where he grew up. And she encounters an old hotel, which of course has lots of dark secrets, maybe a ghost or two. So one of the greatest endorsements that I can give to a film that's based on a novel is after watching the movie, I want to go read the book. Now, I didn't have time to do that yet. It's on my list now. But I can definitely say with So Cold the River, I had to know more about these characters, more about this setup. So I wanted to ask Paul, how did you come to adapt the novel to then direct? And then Claire, how did you come to put the movie together? Did you approach Paul? Did he approach you? How did that work?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, great. So I knew that Michael Koryta, the novelist, and Pete Yonkman, who's one of the exec producers, along with Michael, were looking to make this movie. And I had read the novel a couple times and was really excited. I also knew that with the budgetary scale that it was going to have to be completely reimagined as a film in order to be made. When you read the novel, you'll see how there was no way to make that into a 90-minute independent film. There's so much happening, but I had a very specific take on it, and I met with Michael and pitched it. And as far as how I came to direct, my approach was, if you want to have this screenplay try to be kind of a one-for-one like the book, which again, I don't think was possible, but I could write a version of that script. I'd be happy to do that. But if I have a take as a director that if you're into this, let's go all the way. And if not, tell me right now, because this is like, I got real excited about the theme of ambition. That is kind of, I mean, the first line in the book talks about ambition. It's key to the story, but there's a lot other stuff happening in the book. And I wanted to narrow it all down to ambition, everything focus on that. And that was my pitch. And Michael was really into it. And we both talked about The Shining, the Kubrick adaptation of The Shining, how we both love the novel and the adaptation and how they're very different. But one captures the spirit of the novel, but does its own thing. And he really wanted to, he was on board with wanting to explore taking it in a direction that works specifically for film and independent film, and go all in and use the book, but don't use the book as a crutch, use the book as inspiration.
Cool.
Yeah. And when I came on board, the project was already in motion. There had already been a few drafts of the script. Michael and Paul were working away. The film is like a very Indiana-born project. I mean, Michael is from Indiana. The hotel, West Baden Hotel, is in Indiana. Paul lives in Indiana. And there's a local production company called Pegasus Pictures that was also on board to work on the film. And when I heard that it was happening, I was chatting with Paul, and he asked me if I wanted to come on board as one of the producers of the film. I'd worked with Pegasus a number of times before. I've worked with Paul a number of times before. This was my first opportunity to be a full lead producer on a feature, so that was pretty exciting. And I'm super grateful that I was able to come along, because it's quite a project to take on for a first timer, but it was great. Yeah.
And what Claire won't tell you is that when one of the early steps, I basically told the Michael and Pete Yonkman that I didn't think we could make the movie if Claire wasn't on board. I just didn't think it was gonna be possible because she just makes things happen. And this was, as she learned, and we all learned during this project, a lot of things needed to happen throughout the course of this production. So I knew that we had zero chance of succeeding if she wasn't on this project. Like it was part of like, I can't do this, not as like a leverage play, but like literally I cannot generate the film if she's not on the film.
He's very kind. It took a village, but I was happy to be a part of that village.
It was a big village. Yes,
it really was.
Well, I love to hear that, because producers sometimes get a bad rap, like, oh, what does a producer even do? And the answer is a lot. So to hear that was such an integral part of making this come together is wonderful to hear. I want to talk a bit about the French Lick resort, which is where a lot of this was filmed. I assumed was it all shot on location, all the interior stuff and even the bedrooms?
Yeah, well, I mean, we did a little bit of movie magic between the two, because there's the French Lick Hotel and the West Baden Hotel, and those are both part of French Lick Resorts. They're
okay.
Two separate entities, but one hotel in the movie. And we used a number of interiors in town, but everything was shot on location in Southern Indiana, and the bulk of the film is shot in the West Baden Hotel.
Okay, well, okay, well, thanks for correcting me on that. I didn't know it was the two different parts of it, but as far as finding these locations, Paul, you're in Indiana, you went to school there. Michael is there. Even Andrew West, I understand, was born in Indiana. So there's this real kind of Midwestern connection. Where these kind of architectural institutions, were these part of the original conception of the story? Did you do location scouting, or is this from the novel?
So they're in the actual hotels are written into the novel. It was the inspiration for the novel. So and part of the reason this project had gone into development a couple times at big studios. It's a bestseller. It got a lot of attention, and every time Michael would go to these studios, they would say, well, let's build a replica, or let's shoot it at another hotel that's kind of cool. And he was like, no, it has to be these hotels. And they just didn't have any interest in shooting it in the state of Indiana, and certainly not in the hotels. So it was very cool in that Michael and I were able to, before I wrote a word of the script, go down to the hotel and really walk around. And you rarely get to write. You sometimes can write to an actor if you know an actor's going to be involved. That's rare, but you never get a write to a location. And so I was able to go and be like, oh, I have to shoot this moment in this space, even though it doesn't make sense yet to do it in this space. Let's figure it out. And so while outlining the script, I was able to, like, getting inspired by certain locations, really open things up. And I've never been able to work that way before, where I could just go into a place and just any space there that was inspiring, I just took note of it. And there were some spaces that were really cool we couldn't fit in, that we were going to try to use. But yeah, I actually, the outlining process was greatly impacted by the physical space that existed.
I've seen the comparisons to The Shining. And, it's about it takes place in this hotel. There's people kind of going crazy in it. There's this sort of supernatural tinge to it. But I think the minor things that set this apart are the filmmaking, the acting, and the writing.
Little.
Right. I mean, it's not to say that Kubrick's movie is a jump scares film, but certainly I think a lot of movies that came after it that tried to do the Shining thing were kind of jump scares and gore horror movies. And So Cold the River is not that. There's a lot of psychological kind of terror. And to your point, Paul, about the theme of ambition and how that sort of can play on people's vanity and sort of damn them if they're not careful. But did those ideas, I mean, you mentioned that it came from the novel that, kind of thematically, but in terms of not doing a traditional horror film like a gore or a ghost picture, was that you trying to put your own stamp on the material and not make it like everything else, or did that come from the book? And Claire, to you as a producer, does it make it any harder to sell this as an idea of like, how do you market, or how do you convince the studio to market a film a certain way if it doesn't fall into, oh, it's gonna reach out and gross you out or scare you to death?
For my part of that question, the book has so many things happening that you could go a variety of different ways. I mean, there are tornadoes and explosions in the book, so there's a version of this film that Michael Bay could come in and just be like, give me a lean $120 million and I'm going to deliver you the 3-hour version of this.
And that would be horrible. I just want to go on the record.
Yes, it would be. It absolutely would be. But there's so much happening in the book. And so the book, all the thematic stuff comes from the book. But as far as like the tone of the film, I have the stuff that I'm into. One of the reasons I love The Shining, I love Hereditary, It Follows, these movies where, yes, there are scares, but it's all about what's happening before the scare, that dread and tension. That was everything to me. Every shot, every cut, everything in there was pretty meticulously planned out, and it was all towards dread. I wanted you to feel that in your gut. I wanted you to feel that impending something happening. That was to me, if that succeeded, everything else was icing on the cake. But the whole thing was built around, I kind of wanted the movie to feel like you're slowly moving towards something disastrous the entire time, but you never stop and take a breath. Never. Like, even I don't really have, I think I have one establishing shot, maybe two in the entire film, because those are usually used to reset the viewer and give them a breath, reorient them. And I just wanted it to feel like you were kind of in a bad dream that just kept slowly pushing you forward and you couldn't stop. That was the goal.
And Claire, I want to get to your answer in a second, but I just want to interject real quick. I also thought of Midsommar, the movie that came out a couple of years ago. There's a whole idea of the festival of rebirth and these characters kind of coming in. Oh, what's this all about? I don't know if this is a product of editing or if it's deliberate, but that element is sort of introduced early on, and it doesn't really come back until the end of the film when a lot of other crazy things have happened. So when it's reintroduced, I was thinking, oh my God, now we're gonna have to face, these characters have to face this, whatever this is going to be, in addition to all the other stuff. So yeah, that was a nice sort of a callback and a surprise. But Claire, talk to me about getting this film out there in the world when it doesn't kind of tick those boxes.
Yeah, I mean, we did have an interesting time of it. We were fortunate enough to be working kind of almost on our own without any hindrances or people to speak to. Our executive producers were behind whatever we wanted to do. So when in the production of the film, we had like an open field to just sort of do whatever we wanted to do. Paul was able to make his vision realized in whatever way he saw possible. And then when it came time to getting it out into the world, I think, yeah, we're in this time where there are, especially with marketing and distributors, there are boxes that need to be checked. And our film has a variety of elements, and it's not as clearly put into a specific, like, this is this kind of film and this is that kind of film. I feel like it has elements of so many different things that it's harder to pin it down. And I think that was challenging to some distributors. They're like, well, there's not enough blood and guts, and so we don't know what to do with this. But also really exciting to others because you can reach a number of different audiences. It's something new. It's something a little different. It's not just your stock B-movie horror, whatever. It's its own thing. And that actually, I think, worked to our advantage in a lot of ways. It opens up who might be interested in this. Like if you're not a horror person, but it looks sort of mysterious and spooky, you can get on board. If you do like those tense, scary moments, like it's going to work for a lot of people. And so that helped us out. I think there were just certain occasions where people wanted a more, like we weren't going to headline at the Gore Fest Film Fest 2022, you know, it's like that's not going to be where we showcase the work. But yeah, and I think also the filmmaking is what stands out. You know, it's we had such an incredible cinematographer, Madeline Kate Kahn. All of our team, you know, the acting was incredible, the writing and directing. So I think the quality of the filmmaking is almost a way to draw you into what this is. And then you just get to kind of go along for the ride.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was something that really kind of blew me away. I don't want to give away what the scene is, but towards the very end of the picture, there is sort of a pulling back tracking shot from someone doing something at a wall. And we go down this really long corridor, and there's sort of a reveal, and there's another reveal, and there's a horrifying reveal. And then it backs up even further, and you realize that, well, someone else is in that that room. And it's wonderful. It's like a Russian nesting doll or something. You just keep pulling it up, and there's all these delightful surprises waiting inside, and it's all just from moving a camera back down a hallway. And I want to kind of ask before I talk about the casting, but on a filmmaking note, I couldn't tell if I was overanalyzing the movie or if there were really sort of thematic visual elements that were included to underscore the story. There was one where Bethany Joy Lenz, who plays Erica, is walking at night outside the property with Andrew West's character. And it's almost a completely black background, but behind them, you can see what look like string lights or footlights. And there's a lot of them, but because they're kind of blurred out in the background, they almost look like embers. I got this feeling that these two characters are almost walking down in the darkest pits of hell. Later on, there is a hotel corridor where you see the overhead lights kind of intersecting in perspective with the wall lights, forming an orange arrow of these circles that's pointing down, again, as if these characters, because by this point they are almost certainly damned, it looks like it's pointing down to hell. Am I overthinking this? Is this my like highfalutin art school cap that I put on before I watched this movie, or is there something there?
I will actually say it's kind of half of both. And I don't mean overthinking, like you're doing exactly what I do every time I've ever watched a film. And usually the case is half the stuff, it's 100% intended, and half the stuff is, I'll say they're accidents, but they're not accidents, because when you have a cohesive vision and you and the cinematographer understand thematically what you want to do with the film and visually how that will be represented, and there's a consistency, you do start to see these framings and the way that light's hitting in various places, the way eye lights are happening, the way things where it's not specifically me going, sometimes it is, sometimes I'm like, hey, I want this to have an extra layer of whatever, do this and do that, or the DP is saying that. But when there is a unity of vision between director and cinematographer, you get a lot of these. There's so many times where in post I was just like, oh, we picked that wallpaper and we wanted a symmetry, but when you see the way the wallpaper separate, the character's face separates from the wallpaper and the way the two lights are, they almost look like they're coming out of her head. That type of stuff was not. Some of that is very much planned. The specific things you brought up were not planned, but were part of an aesthetic that were very much planned. And it starts to, anytime you are visually going for something pretty dynamic and you're consistent with it, those sorts of things are going to pop up everywhere. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, like, the master of doing that is Kubrick. And I mean, you've seen the documentary on The Shining, I'm assuming, where
room 437 or 237.
Yep.
Yeah,
where there's like 65 competing theories that none of them could all be true, but that's it. With the richness of the thing, it's all there. When you're hearing each one of them, it's like, oh, yep, that's it. That's what it's about. And then the next guy is talking about something else. And so I think that when you properly capture tone, you get all of these possibilities for the viewer, and that's what like you strive for, and you hope that you do get like somebody that's like, I see this is what you were trying to say, and it's like, yes, that sounds good to me.
Excellent. Lastly, I do want to talk about the casting, because Bethany Joy Lenz, who I mentioned earlier, I was a big fan of hers all the way back to One Tree Hill. But this isn't a scream queen character. Again, it kind of jives with the theme that you're trying to go for, which is something, it's a movie for and about kind of adults. They're not being chased by an axe maniac or anything like that. But tell me about getting her. And was she one of the first people cast, or was some of the supporting players cast, and how did that all come together?
Claire, you want to start on this one?
Sure. Well, we didn't have anybody attached or that we knew was definitely, Paul might have to correct me on that, but I don't think we had anybody already signed up for the film when we went into casting. We worked with an amazing casting director, Stephanie Holbrook, who's based out of New York. And yeah, we started with Erica. That seemed like the place to start for everybody. And we had a laundry list of folks we were interested in seeing. And Joy sent over a tape, and it kind of just, our search was over pretty instantly. Paul, I don't know if you want to talk about seeing Joy's tape or anything.
By the time we saw Joy's tape, we had seen a lot of tape. There was something about it, like Claire said, once you saw her tape, it was like, oh, well, like, what are we doing? Like, why would we continue this? This is like when you're casting, it all feels wrong until it feels exactly right. I always feel that way when sometimes you cast and you're like sending out offers to people, you're like, I think they'd be good at this, I don't know. But when we luckily had the luxury of having the time and financing that wasn't entirely tied to, oh, this person does really well in Guam, so we could get them, or like we could sell the Portuguese rights to this if you get this actor, which is the reality of independent film. We were lucky enough that we could be a little patient and get the people that were exactly right for the roles. And man, she was, and I'd never seen One Tree Hill. I did not know her work, which is even more of a testament to how good it was. That a lot of times you see somebody that's known for various things, and you're like, oh, I hope they're good, because they're known for so many things. And for her, I was like, I don't know who this person is. She's amazing. And then you go look her up, and you're like, oh, she's a star already. This is okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And we had, because we weren't looking to attach actors to get the film greenlit and bring on financiers, we had the project, we were moving forward, we could take our time, and we read pretty much everyone. And we had the luxury of getting to see tapes for all of the characters, which you don't necessarily do. Sometimes you just, give it to whoever, the name sounds good. And I think Paul really wanted to make sure that each character really fit his vision and what he was going for. And because we got to actually see them read, that's how it all came together so beautifully.
Well, it did come together beautifully. It's one of those rare moments where I come out of a film saying every part, from the biggest to the smallest, was perfectly cast and perfectly performed. It's a nice tapestry that was woven for this movie. So congratulations, both of you, Paul and Claire, on So Cold the River. And thank you very much for taking some time to talk with me about it. Best of luck. I would like to say, The Shining has been adapted a couple of times and into miniseries. Any possibility that maybe this could become like a Netflix show, like an 8-part thing where you could really get into the novel and sort of, reimagine the reimagining?
That is well beyond, I think, both of our pay grades and our rights holding abilities at this point. But
BD.
we'd love. I can't speak for Claire. I'd love to live in this world another time. That's for sure.
We've definitely only scratched the surface. There's a lot more there. That's true.
Excellent. Well,
gotta get those tornadoes in there.
I want to see that. Yeah. How did tornadoes figure into this story? I got to know. But all right. Well, thank you again, both. Take care and best of luck.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.